At the intersection of true crime and real estate, you'll find Crime Estate. I'm Heather.
And my name is Elena. As real estate agents and true crime junkies, we view crimes through a different lens.
So walk through the door of some of the most notorious true crimes with us and discover how sometimes the scene of the crime has its own story to tell.
Well, hey y'all, thanks for joining us on today's episode of Crime Estate. I'm Heather, and I'm joined, as always, by Elena and Melanie. Hey, ladies.
Hey. Hey to both of you, and thank you to all of our listeners who are listening right now or watching us on YouTube. We have an epic story for you today, and a special shout out to Vanessa, who had lots of theories about a recent story. Our Jim Krosnick?
Yeah.
Krosnick.
I forget how we decided to pronounce
Jim's story. She shared a bunch of theories on our YouTube channel, and we kind of agree.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, totally agreed with it. Yeah. We always laugh when we're trying to remember how to pronounce people's names because we know we do a bad job, but we try and at least be somewhat consistent.
Yes.
We're like, okay.
We might be wrong, but we're consistently wrong.
Yes.
Well, and Mel, this episode that we're covering today was really your idea, and I'm trying to remember how you got here.
Oh, no. It was a Texas Monthly article that was talking about our Joan Robinson Hill, which was one of the stories that we recently did in episode 75. Hello. And that was Blood, Money, and Murder in River Oaks. And Texas Monthly and honestly, it's one of the best magazines. And that, it really is a good. When we lived in Virginia, we had a Texas Monthly subscription. I actually love their deep dives into crime. Like they have some really, really in-depth, fun articles. But they had on their website kind of a blurb about, I think maybe the Joan Robinson Hill house for sale or something came up about it, but they referenced the fact of the Candace Mossler story and how it was only a couple of blocks away from her house, which then led us to what is that story? And honestly, shocked that we had never even heard of it before.
Right. And it's wild. I was reading up a little bit about it. I still want some teasers, so I just kind of peripherally looked at it. But that sounds like she's lived 6 lives at once.
Yeah. I'm ready for the whole Southern soap opera of it all. We often talk about how everything is bigger in Texas, and I think this story really is.
Yeah, so it definitely is a soap opera, but let's start at the very beginning. Candy, or as she liked to be called, Candace, was born Candace Weatherby, and she was born in 1920 in a tiny little town in Buchanan, Georgia, which is about 55 miles west of Atlanta. She was the sixth of 12 children. Her father, Lon Weatherby, was a farmer, and her mother, Lizzie, spent most of her adult life pregnant and managing their very modest household. Now, they lived with no phone, no radio, and plenty of manual labor. Remember, this is the 1920s. And the Weatherby kids planted crops, they picked cotton, they gathered eggs from their chickens. Author Mickey Herskowitz once described their upbringing as, quote, hard scrabble living, saying that the South was still decades behind the North in terms of comfort and progress.
I was just sitting here thinking, 12 kids? I mean, that poor woman had no break. I mean, I just kind of kept thinking about 12 kids.
There's no way.
Yeah, she like they said, she did really live her adult life pregnant. I mean, between us, we only have 5 kids. We got 3 moms, and it still feels like a lot.
Way too much.
But, despite the fact that there were so many kids in this family, Candy always stood out. She was this beautiful little blonde girl with this huge imagination. According to one of her nieces, she would wear nightgowns to church and tell people that she was pretending to be a princess. So that flair for drama, it really never went away. It sort of followed her throughout the rest of her life, which really wasn't easy from the beginning. When she was just 12 years old, her mother died during childbirth. It would have been her 13th child, and that baby was unfortunately stillborn as well. And after that, her dad really just sort of fell apart. He left the family behind. He began drinking heavily. He abandoned his younger children to be raised by relatives. And, from 12 years old on, Candace was really sort of on her own.
That's heartbreaking. It's a really traumatic childhood. You don't walk away from that without some survival instincts.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. She was sort of raised in survival mode. By high school, her grandfather was encouraging her to marry, not for love, of course, but just for stability. So enter Norman Johnson into this story. He's a family acquaintance who is 10 years Candy's senior. He's a civil engineer, so he has a good job. And they got married in 1939 when Candace was 19. And they moved to Anniston, Alabama. A year later, she had their first child, Norman Jr. But Candy really wasn't cut out for small-town domestic life. She started volunteering with the USO to entertain soldiers at Fort Benning. And it was there, y'all, that she met a very notable figure, Winthrop Rockefeller, son of the legendary Rockefeller dynasty.
Like he was an actual Rockefeller?
Like an actual Rockefeller.
Okay.
Named Winthrop.
As one is.
Which I like that name. Well, it reminds me of Trading Places.
That's exactly what. Okay, it sounds like old money.
Yes.
Yes. And let's just say that Winthrop and Candy's relationship might have been a little more than just, dances and polite conversation. Years later, in Candy's life, during a legal hearing in Houston, an attorney asked Candace whether her daughter Rita, whose middle name was Rockefeller, was Winthrop's child, and her lawyer would not allow her to answer the question.
Ooh, that's super juicy and super bold, naming your kid after a Rockefeller.
Right. And you're married. You're like, it's okay, honey. We're just going to name this baby after my
So nothing subtle
lover.
about her.
Yeah, Candy was not subtle.
Gotcha. Yeah.
At all. Many, many things, but not subtle. Her marriage to Norman shockingly did not last much longer. He moved west and eventually ended up in Colorado, while Candace stayed. At this time, they're in New Orleans, and she stayed there with their 2 kids. And that's sort of where she began reinventing herself. She worked as a model for a local department store. She designed lingerie, and she even enrolled at the Barbizon School of Modeling in New York. And when she returned from this school in New York, she thought, well, I could open the same type of school here, and people won't have to travel to New York for this. So she opened her own finishing school in New Orleans, offering classes on poise, beauty, and public speaking. She called it the Candace Modeling and Self-Improvement School.
First of all, I love that name. Just like cut to the chase. Like this is what it is. But also you promised our listeners you weren't going to talk about any more beauty queens.
I know. I don't understand what happens with all these beauty queens. I had no idea that she was a model when we started the story.
Like drawn to it.
Yeah. Well, but this was really Melly's story idea. So it's all Mel's fault.
Yes, of course.
So Candace used modeling essentially to go from like this dirt poor farm girl to, running her own business in the Garden District. She hosted fashion parades and Easter events on Canal Street with marching bands and her students. But and here's where it gets a little murky. There were rumors. Some suggested that she also ran an escort service out of the back of her modeling school. Soldiers back from war supposedly took dance lessons that included some not so standard extracurriculars.
So she's got hustle, but morally questionable hustle.
Yeah, I think that's right. And
I mean, we can always respect the hustle.
Yeah.
And none of these rumors slowed her down. She got involved in the New Orleans art scene. She volunteered with the opera. She took on the role of, just a charming socialite fundraiser. And that's where she met Jacques Mossler, a businessman with deep pockets and even deeper Rolodex. He would become her second husband. Now, unlike Candy, Jacques wasn't from the South or even from the U.S. originally. He was born in Romania and moved to Buffalo, New York with his family when he was just a child. Eventually, he found his way down to New Orleans, where he set up a used car dealership. So think about this. This is like, 30s and 40s, maybe even before then. Cars are sort of new. And people are getting loans to buy them and then maybe defaulting on the loan. So he was going in and like getting the cars after people defaulted and selling them for a profit.
Okay.
Essentially. And he probably didn't always play by the rules either. According to an Old Times Picayune article from 1916, a young Jacques was arrested for grand larceny after a doctor's car went missing from a hospital and then turned up in his dealership's garage. There's no clear record of a conviction, but I think it gives you an idea of like his early hustle as well.
Gotcha. So it sounds like Candy and Jacques were kind of a match made in morally flexible heaven.
Morally flexible heaven. I love it.
I love it.
So after serving in the army during World War I, Jacques returns to New Orleans and sort of shifts gears from there. He sold the dealership. He moved into consumer finance. So he started loan companies. He provided high interest credit to working class people looking to buy things like appliances and furniture or cars. And then basically for folks who couldn't get loans from traditional banks. Eventually, he expanded into real estate and insurance, and he became quite wealthy through a mix sort of ambition and like this aggressive lending practice. And so by the time Candace walked into his office in early 1947, she was 27 years old and he was 52. Both of them had recently ended long marriages. He had been married for 30 years and had 4 daughters from that relationship. And when Candace approached him as part of her volunteer work with the New Orleans Opera, he only donated $25 to the opera, saying that opera bored him.
Dang.
But clearly, Candy did not bore him. Just weeks later, they had a conveniently timed run-in at the Audubon Zoo where Candy just happened to be with her kids during Jacques' usual lunchtime stroll. Their relationship moved fast, and by May of 1949, the pair were married in Fort Lauderdale at a small Presbyterian church. Between them, they had 6 kids, Jacques with his 4 daughters and Candy with her 2 kids from her previous relationship with Norman. Now, I think we could say that at this point, Jacques is sort of looking for his trophy wife, right? She's 29 years old. He's 50-something. But, sometimes I get curious. I'm like, when did the term trophy wife come into, our vernacular?
Right.
When do y'all think? And I will say it was much more recently than I expected.
I was thinking 50s,
Yeah,
60s.
see, I've jumped ahead and I read your research on this, and I was shocked because I honestly thought this was, well, let's be honest now, there's been trophy wives since time began. But yeah, I would have guessed in the 50s, 40s, maybe at the beginning of the century.
Yeah, so actually it was coined in August of 1989 by Julie Connolly, who was a senior editor of Fortune magazine, and she used it in a cover story. And ever since then, it just became something that we use commonly.
I'm really surprised a woman.
89.
Yeah, a woman did
I'm really
it.
surprised a woman came up with that.
And Fortune magazine, which is about financial stocks and companies. It's not usually a little racy or a little scandalous. Yeah.
So Jacques and Candy are married, and they decide, new chapter in our life, let's move to a new city. So Jacques decided to relocate his financial empire to Houston, Texas. Now, neither of them had roots there, but with Candy's flair and Jacques' capital, they were ready to reinvent themselves once again. They packed up their lives in New Orleans and made their way to River Oaks, Houston's most exclusive neighborhood, which we've talked about several times on this podcast.
Right, yeah. So 2 self-made people with complicated pasts moving into this super exclusive zip code in Houston.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've briefly touched on the fact that we recently, actually just a few episodes ago, we did the Joan Robinson Hill story, who died in a highly suspicious manner. And if you haven't heard that story and you like good old big Houston River Oaks crime, that's a good one. But we also actually did another River Oaks story pretty early on in our career, in our podcasting career. In episode 13, we covered Doris Angleton, who was also murdered in River Oaks. And in both of these stories, their rich husbands, emphasis on the rich husbands, were accused of the crimes but never convicted. So this is going to be a little bit of a twist on that story.
Yeah, you're right. And it's here in this old money neighborhood that Jacques and Candace built not just a house, but a statement. The home, located on a 3-acre estate on Willowick Drive in River Oaks, was referred to by locals as the castle.
The castle. So he really did build her a castle in the middle of River Oaks.
I mean, pretty close. This was not just any old mansion. Just any old mansion.
Yeah.
It was 3 stories, red brick Georgian-style mansion with towering columns, massive staircases, and it was staffed like a royal estate. Candace had maids, cooks, butlers, handymen, gardeners, and even a chauffeur. Her personal maid was Egyptian and fluent in 3 languages. The house itself had multiple living areas, a formal dining room with chandeliers, and a sweeping marble foyer and a pool.
Yeah, and I just have to interject because right before we did this, I was looking up, somebody had a blog post about this story, and it was amazing to me. And it was probably about 10 years old. The amount of people who said, oh, my mom, worked there, and I lived in the guest house, or, oh, I worked there for 3 months, or I worked there. Like, she had a huge amount of staff. And just, we talked, you briefly said 3 acres. 3 acres sort of implies it's in the country or a little farther out of town. No, River Oaks is the heart of the city in Houston. So, I mean, can you imagine like a 3 acre property in Dallas in the middle of Highland Park, for example?
Right.
I mean, that's crazy huge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So in addition to the house, y'all, they had a 7-car garage packed with luxury vehicles because, of course.
Why not?
Yeah. So when the house was recently for sale in 2016, the description read, more than 2 acres of park-like property surrounded this iconic Georgian mansion. And I'll go back and say they sold off some acreage over time. Okay. So Mel, you're right. Like it was originally 3 acres and then they've sold off some parcels.
Got it.
Still huge.
Yeah. So this Georgian mansion features classic 18th century proportions and symmetry. Beautifully crafted details include carved door pediments, wood-burning fireplaces, random plank oak floors, marble floors, high ceilings, and deep moldings. Other appointments include an underground wine cellar, lighted tennis court, pool, gazebo, garage parking for 5 cars, and separate quarters. At that time in 2016, the house was listed for $11,500,000.
Well, that's just next level. Like not even fancy oil baron stuff. That's like storybook.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the house was not surprisingly designed to impress. Now, keep in mind, this was 1950s Houston, which was in the middle of a massive post-war boom. Oil money was pouring in, and the city was becoming the epicenter of Southern wealth. And between the shipping industry and the real estate development and oil giants expanding operations, Houston was just like glittering with new money. And Jacques, well, he had gone from a used car dealer in New Orleans to a banking and loan mogul in Texas. And now he was building dynasties, both financial and architectural. The Willowick drive home became the couple's kingdom. Candace hosted dazzling charity events, social teas, and lavish dinners. There were silks, silverware, and society photographs being snapped at every event that the Queen of River Oaks hosted.
She came a long way from rural Alabama.
Yeah, and you might have mentioned this, but I don't recall. So she gave up her modeling empire.
I mean, yeah.
Okay.
I think the modeling empire was really just designed to find a husband.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
It had served its purpose. Now, get this. Jacques gave Candy a monthly allowance of $5,700 to manage the house. And he had bonuses of $5,000 for her birthday, the wedding anniversary, and other special occasions. So, of course, I had to check and see what that would be equivalent to in today's math. Oh, that's a $65,000 a month budget just to manage the household.
My goodness.
I mean, I would take $5,000 a month today. I mean, Heather, your Amazon purchases.
All right.
I mean, hey, you know, husband John, if you're listening to this, you do not spend $5,000 a month in Amazon.
Oh, no, yes, no.
But you do like your Amazon.
I do like Amazon. It just makes life so easy. So, according to crimelibrary.org, Jacques...
crimelibrary.org.
They had a great article on this.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Jacques, ever the pragmatic businessman, had a vasectomy after the after the birth of his 4th daughter. He apparently enjoyed the occasional fling, and he was paranoid that somebody was going to trap him into an unwanted pregnancy and blackmail him for money. And so he was like, never mind, I'll just get a vasectomy and I won't have to worry about these gold diggers. But Candy really wanted another baby. She just had the 2 from her first relationship, and she's still pretty young at this point. So fast forward 8 years into their marriage, Jacques is away on business. He's in Chicago, and he calls Candy, and he's like, hey, I heard about this horrible story. Apparently, a mother of 5 young kids was shot and killed by her husband. He was like a war vet and was having some sort of psychotic episode, and he killed her and another one of their children. And so it left these 4 kids without parents. And so Candy immediately flew up there, and Jacques used his political power of money and influence to be able to adopt these children and bring them back to Houston.
Wow.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, we've given Candy a lot of grief so far,
Yeah.
but
That's amazing.
yeah.
She did like the kids.
And so at this point, it seems like everybody's living their own fairy tale life in River Oaks. You know, Candy now has the children that she really wanted with Jacques. And she's in her 30s. She's loving society life. But, you know, Jacques is like quickly aging. He remains deeply focused on building his business. And Candy still wanted the attention and the fun and the excitement, you know, something even more exciting than those high society parties. And so let's fast forward a little bit to the early 1960s, 1961, in fact. So Candy gets a call from one of her sisters, Babe, and Babe's 20-year-old son, Melvin Powers, who would be Candace's nephew, had just landed himself in jail after a fraud conviction. Apparently, Elena, during a stint selling magazine subscriptions door to door, Mel scammed an elderly man out of $20,000 in a fake stock deal. He spent 90 days behind bars, and Babe asked Candy if Melvin could come stay with her and Jacques for a while and just sort of get himself back on track.
So can we buy the rights to the Fresh of Bel-Air theme song to play that here? Because it's very Fresh Prince of Bel-Air
It is,
vibes.
right?
Yes.
Yes. I don't know what to do with you, kid. Go live with your aunt and
Yeah,
uncle.
yeah.
I'm going to have that theme song running through my head
know.
all
You're
day
welcome.
now. That's
You're
such a
welcome.
good show. Yeah, so that's exactly what they did. Candace didn't hesitate. She invited Mel to come live with her and Jacques. And when Mel showed up at 20 years old, he didn't look like much. He had acne scars. He sort of had this bit of a rough around the edges look. But Candy rolled out the red carpet for him. He got his own bedroom in the mansion, a sleek Thunderbird to drive, and he had access to all the high-end medical treatments that he wanted. He underwent multiple cosmetic surgeries, everything from getting circumcised and having his tonsils taken out to ear pinning and dermabrasion to clean up those acne scars.
Wow.
Yeah, he sort of got the full makeover. And he is a really big, tall guy. He's 6'4". All the descriptions I read of him said he was built like a linebacker. So even though he was only 20 at this point, he sort of passed for a much older man. And then, Candy's going out. She's buying him the right clothes. She gets him a sports coat. And so he really had this polished and professional look at this point. And to help him get on his feet, Candy said to Jacques, surely we have a business that will employ him. And so Jacques took him in and gave him a job at one of his businesses. He started training Melvin to be a manager at one of his offices.
Yeah, that's not a fresh start. That's a whole complete rebranding of him. I could be adopted by this family.
I know, a little bit of a fairy godmother comes in and sprinkles her pixie dust, and you're beautiful, and you've got a job, and you're driving a Thunderbird.
Although I think it's really weird that his aunt got him circumcised as a 20-year-old. Sorry, just had to say that.
Yes, it is. It is not the weirdest thing in this story. It's weird. So a year later in 1962, Jacques becomes sick. He has some sort of respiratory illness that just lingers and lingers. And like every ill person, he just traveled to Europe for some mineral treatments. So he's gone for a while. And then he comes back and they're like, really, the ocean air would be good for you. So he has an apartment in Key Biscayne, Florida. And he stays there for several months at a time. Now, when he returned to Houston in June of 1963, rumors were flying in River Oaks that things were, well, like we said, Mel, getting a little weird. One of the mansion staff told Jacques that he had walked in on Candy and Mel having sex more than once.
What the hell?
It's probably why she wanted him circumcised. Oh. Now, Jacques initially doesn't believe this. So he goes and finds Candy's diary, and she had just written it all out.
What?
And so he's reading her diary, and he's like, yep, I guess they're having sex.
Oh, my gosh.
Now, let's be clear. This is her nephew by blood. Not that by marriage makes it really any better.
Right, yeah.
But it's her sister's biological son.
Ugh.
That's gross.
It's so gross.
So bad. So Jacques is not happy about this. He fires Mel, not surprisingly. He kicks him out of the house. He has 2 security guards come and escort him out of the house. Mel isn't happy about being escorted out of the house and is shouting, I'll be back. I'll get you, whatever. And Jacques like, I don't really want to be involved in all this drama in Houston. So he goes back to Key Biscayne, Florida, and sort of settles in there in this luxury apartment at the Governor's Lodge. Now, Elena, if you really want to, you can also move to the Governor's Lodge right now. There's currently a 2-bedroom property for lease for $4,000 a month. The description reads, fully renovated corner unit in Key Biscayne. The first floor corner condo unit offers privacy with no neighbors and is located on a quiet street just a short walk away from the beach. I could live by the beach.
I could live by the beach. Not
You
for
don't really
$4,000 a month.
No.
No, not really.
You don't like the water.
I don't. I like looking at it.
I was going to say, you like to look at, and honestly, you would like the Key Biscayne area because you can walk out really far and the water is like only up to your knees.
I don't know. Maybe. Maybe.
Mel, did you say you've stayed there before?
Yeah, I've spent a decent amount of time in the Miami area. I'm definitely not an expert, but during business school, I lived out there, and then I've probably been there like 6 or 7 times over the years. And like 2 summers ago, we were doing a big Key West trip, but we first flew into Miami, and we stayed using points at the Ritz-Carlton in Key Biscayne, which was lovely. And Key Biscayne is like a 5-mile-long barrier island. It was a coconut plantation. It's connected to Miami by a causeway and like a small road that you go across some bridges to this island. Funny enough, its motto today is like Island Paradise.
Oh.
And today it is one of the wealthiest zip codes in Southern Florida. And Southern Florida has a lot of rich people too. So, just to put this all in context, it has some really beautiful homes. It has a state park at the end, but honestly, it has a lot of condos because it's a really thin, skinny island. And what was interesting about it was it really only became kind of a residential area, other than maybe probably a few plantations, in the 1950s. So if you start thinking about it, in the time of this story in the early 60s, this was like new, like shiny, bright, new, fancy place to be. Kind of funny enough, this was where President Nixon made his winter White House. So that's where he would go in the winter time. So cool. Yeah, it's actually a really pretty area. And if you can stay at the Ritz-Carlton on points, it is lovely.
Mel's the best at using her points.
Yeah, she really is.
Yeah. So Jacques is over here in Key Biscayne. Candace is still in Houston. Rumors are flying. I mean, you know how it is when there's something juicy. Like everybody in the neighborhood's talking about it. But Candy, of course, is denying all the rumors about having a sexual relationship with Mel. She says that Jacques is really just upset with Mel and fired him because Mel wanted to start his own business, and that Jacques has gone to Florida for his business. So she's trying to play it like nothing's wrong, everything's fine here. And apparently Jacques had looked into divorcing her, but in their prenup, if he filed for divorce, I guess she got like half of everything. And she didn't have any interest in divorcing him. It was a pretty good life for her. So Candy kept up appearances, and a year later, in June of 1964, she and her children decided to visit Jacques in Florida. And everything seemed fine. They had beach days, they had family outings. But at night, Candy kept complaining of these headaches. And so she would leave the house and go to the hospital to be treated for migraines of an evening, which is sort of weird. Like, you're not okay during the day and then have migraines at night. Like, if you have a migraine, you just
have a migraine.
You have it all day.
Okay, got it.
But one night she woke up and her migraine was so bad that she was like, I've got to go to the hospital and I'm going to take the kids with me, which is also weird. And so Jacques stayed at home and they arrived at the hospital at 2:06 a.m.
Okay, and I just got to pause because, Heather, I do know you get migraines. So when you have a really bad migraine, are you thinking, I'm going to wake up in the middle of the night and I'm going to get in my convertible car and wake up my 3 kids, because I think one of them was still at summer camp, but the other 3, little kids or, elementary, middle school age kids, but I'm not going to wake my husband up. I'm going to drive by myself to the hospital.
No. As a matter of fact, Botox is like a big treatment for migraines now. But like 10 or 15 years ago when it first became a treatment, my doctor was like, the insurance won't pay for it unless you come into the office every time you have a migraine and document it. I was like, you know what I am not doing in the middle of my migraine is like getting in the car and driving anywhere. Like, I have one time almost gone to the hospital. It was so bad. But I couldn't have like seen or functioned to get there myself.
Right.
Somebody would have had to have taken me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just the whole scenario seemed so weird. At a minimum, I'm waking up my husband.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And when she returned home that evening, or I guess really the next morning at 4:30 a.m., she found that while she was gone, Jacques had been murdered, bludgeoned and stabbed inside that Key Biscayne apartment. He had been attacked in his bed, suffering multiple head wounds and stab wounds to the chest, and he was wrapped in a thin orange blanket. Y'all, he was stabbed 39 times and hit over the head with a glass vase in the shape of a swan, which was found broken next to his body. The family dog was tied up to a pillar in the condo.
What?
Yeah, that sounds brutal. I mean, if I've seen any crime movie, something that violent is personal. It does not sound like a robbery gone wrong.
Yeah, you're right. And, police did not feel like the scene looked like a break-in. There was no sign of forced entry. Nothing had been stolen. Jacques still actually had like his wallet and his watch on him. And so police immediately suspected somebody close to them. Now, despite his wealth, he is living in this smaller little apartment. And there's a lot of talk that like maybe before Candy got there, he had been living with this male employee from one of his banks. This guy's name was Cal. And when police asked Candy who she thought might have killed him, she insinuated that he had new friends that were male and that possibly he was sleeping with men. And she was concerned that he had been exhibiting all these homosexual tendencies. And she was like, I think maybe he met a strange man and invited him back to the apartment. So she's like, yeah, it's definitely one of these guys that have murdered him. It's like a love affair gone wrong.
There's so much weird here.
Yeah. And, they did talk to Cal and he's like, there's nothing to this story. Yes, I have an apartment here at Key Biscayne that's furnished from the company, but like I took a pay cut to come here. That was part of my like package deal. I'm not living with Jacques. And he did say he had seen Jacques earlier that evening, but was at his own home when Jacques was murdered. He didn't have an alibi, but he also really didn't have a motive other than, at one point they shared an apartment for a little while. But he was like, we didn't have a relationship. This is crazy.
This is sort of, Jacques, leaves his wife, goes to his other apartment. He has an employee. The thing about Key Biscayne is, well, it's not far from like downtown Miami. It is like 5-6 miles away. I would not put it, against him that he wanted this guy to drive him around or, like just somebody to help him.
Yeah, so I watched a great episode on this story on A Crime to Remember, and they had the best quote in there. And he said, finding a killer is like planning a dinner party. You want to keep the list short and well edited. So, when they're looking for suspects, they really didn't have a very big list to that point. Their only real lead was that somebody had seen a car leaving the governor's lodge that evening. It was a white Chevy that actually belonged to Jacques' company. They had repossessed it, and their family had just been using it. So I guess there's this guy by the name of Roscoe Brown, and he's sort of like a lot of episodes or stories I read called him the family fixer. I think he's just like the guy that takes care of things. Not like, to me, fixer has like negative connotations, but he's the guy that's like, oh, you're going to be at the house. Well, I'll make sure there are groceries delivered, or, oh, you're flying into Florida. I'll make sure there's a car there for you to get picked up, or you need plane tickets. He just handles stuff.
Gotcha.
Does a little bit of this. Yeah, right. Yeah, it does a little bit of that.
So Roscoe says that he had this white Chevy delivered to Candy 6 days before Jacques was murdered. And Candy says she returned it to the company lot 3 days before that. However, when police put out an APB on this car, they find it actually at the Miami airport. Police talk to airport personnel and they find out, lo and behold, that Mel had actually paid cash for a ticket from Houston to Miami on the afternoon before the murder and flew back to Houston fewer than 7 hours after Jacques was killed.
I'd say it's a smoking gun.
Yeah. You remember when you could pay for cash for airline tickets?
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy. So playing a hunch, the police found a bar in between the apartment and the airport. And sure enough, Mel had been there. This place was called the Stuffed Shirt. He had been there twice, once right after the plane landed and another time around midnight that same night. So that puts Mel in the area just hours before Jacques is killed. Now, here's where it gets like tabloid level wild.
It's not already?
Even more.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So investigators discover a love note in Candace's handwriting written to Mel. The note was filled with passionate declarations, and detectives started putting together the pieces. Mel had been in Florida at the time of the murder. Candace's late-night hospital visits were those possibly like a strategy to set up an alibi to show that she was out of the house at the time of the murder. Now, they lifted a fingerprint from the countertop at the Governor's Lodge apartment, and sure enough, it was Melvin's. But police wanted to know, was this Melvin's idea? Did he have help? So Roscoe Brown, the family fixer, he's the one that actually leads them to having like enough evidence to think that Candy's involved with this too, because he said that he saw Candy drive away in that white car just the day before the murder. He didn't know that she had already told police that she had returned the car 3 days earlier. So then the police start asking more about Candy's visit to the hospital that night. And when they talked to witnesses at the hospital, they said that Candy actually received 3 phone calls at the hospital that night. The nurse said it was the same man's voice every time, and the last call was around 4:30 a.m. So police speculate that it was Mel calling to tell her that she could return to the apartment, that Jacques was dead.
She was in so much pain that she needed to go to get migraine treatment in the middle of the night, but she could also get phone calls.
Yeah. So, not surprisingly, both Candace and Mel were arrested and charged with Jacques' murder. And when the trial began in January of 1966, it was an all-out media frenzy. Reporters from Time, Life, Newsweek, the Saturday Evening Post all showed up. The New York Daily News plastered subway stations with posters that said, "Candy Mossler murder trial, follow Theo Wilson every day." It was essentially like the O.J. Simpson case of the 1960s. It was a twisted cocktail of scandal and family drama, wealth, sex, murder. The Houston Chronicle called it a tale of savage passion and intrigue, and the Chicago Tribune's reporter said the whole thing was, quote, lubricated by sex.
Ew.
So at one point after Candy's arrest, she's met at the Miami airport, and, you know, like all the media's there, they're filming, and they're like, "Mrs. Mossler, you've been accused of incest, adultery, and murder." And he like shoves his microphone into her face. And he's like, "What would you like people to know about you?" And her reply was, "Well, sir, no one is perfect."
Ooh, okay. All right then.
So, like I said, when the trial kicked off, it was unlike anything anyone had seen before. One journalist who covered the trial firsthand and is now like in his late 80s described it as a pure spectacle, comedy and tragedy intertwined with a leading lady who seemed too good or maybe too bad to be true. His editor told him to write as long as you want. No one will be able to turn away from this. You had a case that involved sex, money, blood, and that was going to draw a lot of media attention. People really enjoyed the sexual angle. So someone who did not enjoy this angle was the presiding judge, George E. Schultz. He declared that, owing to the graphic nature of some of the testimony, that no one under 21 would be admitted into the courtroom. And I mean, this only fueled the public's fascination.
That is
with
when
the trial.
I would want to see it.
Spectators would line up starting at 5 a.m. just to get seats in court for the day. And like, I guess they had maybe 2 dozen or so seats that were available. So like they were lining up to get one of the coveted seats. But get this. So all of the assets that Candy is set to inherit, because now Jacques is dead, they're frozen, like until they figure out if she is going to be, you know, indicted for his murder or whatever. So in order to pay her lawyers, she says, just come over and go through all my furs and diamonds and take whatever you want as payment for now.
Okay. Can you do that?
I mean, I guess if the lawyer says yes.
Okay. Well, yeah. Okay.
I hope John's not working for furs and diamonds.
Right. Yeah.
Cold hard
seriously.
cash, it's good.
You're not seeing it being brought into your house.
Yeah. On the first day of testimony, Candy arrived looking like a Hollywood star. She stepped out of the car dressed head to toe in white, a trench coat, silk sheath dress and pumps, and flashing just a dazzling smile. Photographers swarmed her, cameras were popping, reporters were shouting questions, and Houston attorney Marion Rosen, who was the youngest member of Candy's defense team, recalled that it was like watching a movie star on the red carpet. She was escorted to the courtroom where a long line of Miami residents, mostly women who had rushed downtown after dropping their kids off at school, waited behind velvet ropes, hoping for a glimpse inside. And when she passed, the crowd would gasp and she would blow kisses back at them.
Dang, she's eating this up.
Totally eating this up. Inside the courtroom, she sat cool and composed on the far left side of the defense table, and Melvin, who was our co-defendant, sat on the far right, mostly staring at the floor, quiet and brooding. One reporter likened him to Lenny from Of Mice and Men, big, silent, and intense.
That's a powerful image, and I bet these journalists used it to their assistants. The glamorous star, the silent giant, side by side, worlds apart. It's really interesting to me that they tried the two of them together as well.
Yeah, because usually we see two very separate trials. I thought the same thing.
Or like, and they turn on each other. Like, no, that's interesting.
So when the prosecution's turn comes, the lead prosecutor, Richard Gerstein, he's this tall, balding veteran. He has a fierce reputation. He had lost an eye in World War II, and he was hoping to use this case as sort of a springboard for political ambitions. He was aiming to be governor of Florida. He painted this dramatic picture for the jury. He argued that Candy had seduced Mel, making him believe that she loved him, and then she convinced him to fly down to Miami to kill Jacques while she was safely at the hospital with the children, giving her the perfect alibi. Again, so many of these stories we cover, like the woman, I was so in love with the woman that I would do anything for her, and that's what he's saying happened.
I don't have that power over Aaron.
No, me either. Certainly not over Aaron.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying.
So the prosecutor didn't hold back. He was like, Mel's the one who bludgeoned and stabbed Jacques 39 times, but he did it out of this, quote, insatiable desire for Candy. The first witness said he had been offered money by Candace and Mel to kill Jacques, and throughout the course of the prosecution's case, they provided several people who had the same story. So here's the timeline that the prosecution laid out. They said Candy picks Mel up from the airport. She drops him off at the stuffed shirt bar. And at 1:30, Candy and the kids go to the hospital for a migraine treatment. And then at 1:45, Mel enters the apartment. He somehow wakes up Jacques, who walks out of the bedroom to see what's going on, and he finds Melvin in the apartment. So Mel kills Jacques by hitting him over the head, like we said, stabbing him 39 times, and then Mel goes to wash his hands before he leaves, which is where he leaves that fingerprint on the countertop in the kitchen. And then Mel calls Candy at the hospital to say he can go home.
It's like a classic femme fatale story.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at her, like, people compared her a little bit to Marilyn Monroe. She sort of has that, like, beautiful, like, feminine essence to her, for sure. But then the defense team gets up, and Mel's lawyer, Percy Foreman, like, he is a legend. Again, that episode I watched of A Crime to Remember, it said of Percy Foreman, quote, he was so slick he could charm the skin off a snake. Oh. I love that. I might start using that.
Okay.
So here he is, this large man. He has slick back hair. He's wearing this big ruby ring. He was like Houston's most famous criminal defense attorney at the time. And he was known for some courtroom theatrics. He was a master orator who quoted Greek poets, Shakespeare, and the Bible in his arguments. He bragged about winning acquittals for over 300 accused murderers, many with overwhelming evidence against them. One famous case actually involved a man who had killed his stepdaughter's boyfriend in front of witnesses, but Foreman turned the courtroom into a pulpit, giving a powerful sermon on adolescent vice, and won the case.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he wasn't just a lawyer. He was a showman. And as both of our sons have learned, Heather, in the mock trial world, sometimes, it's not just about having the side of the law behind you. It is how dramatic you can be and how, great of a argument you can be and showy.
Yeah, absolutely. And, so Foreman's strategy here is really to put Jacques on trial himself. It's a, blame the victim kind of mentality. And so he tells the jury that Thousands of people hated Jacques. He called him ruthless and a pirate of the seven seas in business. He painted Jacques as a man who lived surrounded by threats, so much so that he kept an axe by his bedside and hired gangsters to deal with blackmailers. And remember, he was sort of in the repo business. So, there's maybe something to be said for, there were probably a lot of people that did not care for him.
Yeah, but that's really intense. It's basically saying that he deserved it.
Yeah, essentially that was what he was pointing out. Also, they start bringing in this, talking about how he was gay in 1950s or 1960s Miami. And, that really would not have been a thing at the time that was as accepted as it is today. And so they were painting him to just be nefarious, in their words, not, mine, in a variety of different ways, both in his business and his personal life. So they said, while the victim was no saint, he was a feared, hated man with many enemies. And Percy Foreman goes on to dazzle the courtroom with all these fiery speeches and wild accusations, but he really didn't have any proof of any of that. There was no solid evidence to back his claims that Jacques was consumed by bizarre sexual fetishes. As Foreman put it, every conceivable sex deviation that anybody has ever had. And most shockingly, Foreman accused Jacques of having an insatiable appetite for high school boys and college students he supposedly picked up in bars known to be frequented by gay men. He went on to say that if each of the 39 stab wounds on Jack's body were inflicted by a different person, there would still be 3 times as many people in Florida with a reason to want him dead. But none of these allegations came with a shred of evidence. Oh my God, what is my problem?
You're fine. Maybe it's that screwdriver.
Yeah, I haven't had much of it.
Yeah, you really haven't.
You've been talking.
2 things. Classic victim blaming.
Yes.
Terrible. And then also, this whole gay thing came into play because of Candy. No one else substantiated that.
No.
Okay.
There's no evidence whatsoever, but the story was salacious enough about her having an affair with her nephew. So it seems like she was able to kind of turn and kind of get the story. Oh, look, he was homosexual, which is so naughty at that time.
Mm-hmm. Right. She's like, I see your incest claim over here. Now let me give you, my husband is gay.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Look over here, not over here. Yeah. So all of this grandstanding seemed to work on the jury. The all-male panel included everyday Miami men. There was a marine specimen collector, a bus driver, a mail carrier, a bellhop, a piano player, and even a truck driver, described in the Houston paper as, quote, a man of the Jewish faith. Okay. And as Foreman sat down after his dramatic speech, the jurors turned their attention to Candace, who blinked back tears and accepted tissues from her young attorney, Marion Rosen. She gently fingered a gold necklace, a long-ago gift from Jacques, and Marion would later say the jurors couldn't take their eyes off of her. Some courtroom observers believe that the trial was over the moment Candace took a seat and crossed her legs.
Yeah. I actually kind of deep dove into the Marion attorney because I thought, okay, that's kind of interesting that there is a female attorney on this. And Marion sounds like she has had a really cool life herself. She's actually still practicing attorney to this day in Houston. She has Marion, I think, a Rosen law firm. She was first put in the bar in I think the early 50s, and her first job was as an assistant in the Port Arthur law offices there by the city, and that was really neat because she came from Manhattan and got hired as a defense lawyer for the city. I mean, I don't know, it just was really interesting. And of course, she was beautiful and petite and blonde, but I found some really cool, and she also was kind of picked for this trial because she was had passed the bar both in Texas and in Florida. Mm-hmm. And I just found some really interesting quotes from her about the strategy that the defense team, because she's the only living person alive still, on the defense team. And she said, let me cut to the chase. We did not want women on the jury because female jurors, as a rule, are very harsh on female defendants. They really scrutinize them carefully, find fault with any little thing, whether it's their clothing, their makeup, their demeanor, their dress, whatever it is, they're going to find fault with it. So we wanted an all-male jury. And a wrinkle in Florida law at this time was that women were excluded from being called for jury duty unless they opted in, which made it a lot easier to get that all-male jury. So anyway, she got that all-male jury. And I will say Marion has had a really successful career, and she stopped wanting to defend criminals, and so she really has leaned in the second half of her career into nursing homes and really helping people in law related to that. But anyway, I just thought it was really cool of a strong female powered attorney at that time.
It's interesting, for sure.
And let's be honest now, Candace and apparently Marion too, had a magnetic presence that would captivate everyone in the room.
Yeah, I mean, she definitely captivated the jury. She also captivated the press. So she would charm reporters during lunch breaks. She would even go out with them socially in the evenings and have drinks and dinner with them. It was crazy.
Wow.
One journalist wrote that he described her as possessing a, quote, a bouncy, unquenchable optimism and, quote, a flashing smile that lit up her face. Another columnist had dinner with her, and he confessed that he found himself rooting for her. And Candace would smile and curtsy and confidently say, the people of Dade County aren't going to be unjust to me. You'll see.
Wow.
When another reporter visited her Miami apartment, Candy was sitting on the floor playing with her infant grandchild and introduced the reporter to her 4 adopted children who she had enrolled in local schools under assumed names. Now, these kids at this point are 11 to 15. And remember, they've had a really tragic life so far. So think about it. 9 years earlier, they witnessed their father killing their mother and one of their siblings. And now here they are, they're faced with my adopted dad has been killed. Adoptive mom may be going to prison. That's got to be really hard.
That's awful.
When asked about their mother, the children insisted that she was loving, that she would never hurt Jacques. Candace's son, Dan, told a striking story. He said that Jacques had always been flashy with money, waving $100 bills even for small purchases. But he also propositioned strangers and made him nervous with his habit of picking up men on the highway.
What?
I think he might have been coached a little bit.
Yeah, the family dynamics add so much complexity to the story. And as we've insinuated before, on one hand, she really loved kids and loved being a mom, but she seems to, I don't know, maybe it's rude, but seems to be pretty obviously had at least assisted in the murder of her husband. It's just a weird juxtaposition.
Well, and not only is, this story sort of all about the murder and the sex, but there's a lot of money involved here too, right? Candace was going to be the heir to Jacques' estimated $7 million fortune. That would be a $60 million fortune today.
Wow.
And she insisted, she loved Jacques deeply. She didn't care about his fortune. And she even traveled to Arlington Cemetery on the first anniversary of his death, kneeling with her children by his grave, a public display of mourning and loyalty. And Percy Foreman's plan to put Jacques on trial worked. After a 5-hour closing argument,
My.
both Candy and Mel were found not guilty.
That's wild.
5 hours. Can you imagine?
No.
Those mock trial competitions are 3 hours. I'm about dead.
Oh my God, they are.
Well, they don't involve sex and
No, thank God.
They have drama, but not sexual drama.
Okay, so after the trial, Candy and Melvin returned to Houston, where they lived together for several years before separating. I know, right?
I don't like that. It's gross.
Melvin goes on to become a real estate developer, in large part because of money that Candy gave him to buy this mobile home business. And he actually had really great success as a developer. He went on to build the Arena Towers, which is this pair of 20-story buildings. And at one point, Helena, he owned the largest yacht in the Western Hemisphere. It was a 142-foot yacht named the Jan Pamela, to which he added a 23-foot section that included a jacuzzi and a mirrored ceiling. Your scrunched up nose.
Ew.
Did I ever tell y'all the story about the time I walked into a bedroom? I was showing people a house and they had a mirrored ceiling.
Weird.
It was so gross.
Why would they take that down?
You would think. It was like this super traditional house, like 4-poster bed with like dark wood. And you look up and it's just like mirrors. Anyway, within a few years, Melvin did go on to face some financial difficulties. I mean, a lot of people in like the 1980s in Houston, had some financial trouble. But he was able to convince a judge that his 20,000 square foot penthouse atop one of the Arena Place towers was protected under Texas homestead laws. So by 1983, Melvin was bankrupt, but he was able to rebuild his fortune in real estate. And he went on to live sort of a long life. He was found dead at the age of 68 in October of 2010 at his home in Houston.
Okay. So they lived together, separated, and he, that we know of, didn't remarry or have kids or anything?
I don't know that I really dug into that. I saw several references to like him liking to have young blonde women on his arm. So I don't know if he ever remarried or not, but he definitely had a type.
Gotcha.
Yeah, he was known around town. He became really kind of famous. I mean, for his business dealings, but I'm sure the shade of this trial, there's all these articles of like, oh, I met him here or I met him there, or just people kind of putting on blog posts. So
right.
he definitely became an infamous guy in the Houston area.
So Candy, not surprisingly, went on to continue to live a life filled with controversy. According to one article I read, in 1971, she married Barnett Garrison, who was 19 years her junior.
She also had a type.
Yes, that's right. The two moved into her River Oaks mansion, and the following year, Garrison suffered brain damage in a fall from a roof of the mansion. So apparently, I don't know if they had an argument or what had happened. He had left the house and Candy had locked him out. And so he's trying to climb up to her bedroom balcony doors, which are on the 3rd story of the house.
Oh my gosh.
And he falls from that 3rd story and has this traumatic brain injury and goes on to live in a nursing home for the rest of his life.
Oh my gosh. That's awful.
And this is the same mansion that Jacques had bought Candy.
Yeah. Now, police do rule that fall accidental. They don't think she pushed him or anything. But the two divorced 3 months later. And in May of 1974, Candy told the police that a masked intruder had broken into her home, chloroformed her, and then made off with $396,000 in jewelry and money. Now, she had reported a similar theft in Miami Beach just 2 weeks earlier. And on that occasion, the thief had soft hands, and he took $200,000 in jewelry. But carelessly, she reported the same item, a $160,000 diamond, stolen with each robbery.
Why would she do that? I mean, she had all this money. Why is she?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if she was trying to get insurance proceeds or if she just wanted some attention.
Oh, that was the attention.
Yeah. I don't know a lot about her finances at that point in her life. But if she has a $160,000 diamond,
she wasn't hurting.
Yeah.
But she was addicted at this time period to Demerol and to different pain pills. So she may not have been completely in her right mind.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, only 2 years after these reported thefts, she did die in her sleep from an overdose of migraine medicine at the Fontainebleau Hotel in Miami Beach.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
She was pretty young, 62?
Yeah, late 50s, early 60s. Yeah. So do y'all want to know what happened to the house?
Yes.
Okay. So, like we mentioned earlier, it was originally on 3 acres. Over time, some of the acreage has been sold off. I did see a listing for a half acre, as recently as 2016, 2017. But the address changed, and we've seen that in a lot of our stories that, either it's because they're replatting it, right? Mm-hmm. So they've sold off the old address, and now they've got a new address for the new property. Or because people just don't necessarily want the connotation with the address of that's the old Candy house,
right,
or whatever.
Yeah.
So it looks like some very rich person bought it not too long ago. Isn't that what you found, Mel?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're that rich, you can sell it off market, and it was really hard to find kind of like who bought it. But there was definitely lots of articles when it was on the sale, like housesoftherich.com, et cetera, that were showing it. And I saw different prices, but all were like 11 to 12 plus $1 million.
Wow.
So it's maintained its value.
Okay.
Yeah, and in 2016, 2017, when it was on the market last time, I would call it a little bit dated. I mean, it was definitely still very traditional. We'll have pictures up on YouTube and social media from when it was on the market last time, but it has that very traditional Georgian manor feel.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, so question of every episode, would you live there? Would you list it?
So remember on the Joan Hill, I said I would not live there because of Doris Angleton in that neighborhood.
Oh, you're out on River Oaks.
Well, no, because the third husband didn't die, and neither husband died there.
Right.
Her last one or the one that. So I'm going to say I would live there, even though that's totally not my vibe. Like the house,
Georgian
Georgian
manor is not your vibe.
Right.
Yeah.
I would live there.
I do like that it has a pool and like a lighted tennis court. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
You could throw some great parties there.
Gosh, yes.
Yeah. What about you, Mel?
I don't have any like negative vibes. Nobody died there. I tried to find information more about the Key Biscayne apartment, and that was a lot harder to find because you never even really got I narrowed it down that it was like a second story, etc. But I couldn't find enough to know about that place. I mean, maybe that one I would have more negative, because it was a violent murder in the house. This one's just a big, rich mansion. Now, if I could afford the staff to maintain it, and
Or the property taxes.
yeah, what did
Here
you
we go
tell
again with the property taxes.
What did you tell me about the property taxes for?
$250,000 a year in property taxes.
So if you were to gift me the house, you would need to gift me the
Right.
$250,000 a year to pay the taxes. But assuming in this hypothetical world that I had all that, sure, I'd live it.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I don't think I could live in the Key Biscayne apartment, mainly because I think if you go to the beach, like you're there to decompress and relax. And so that would be weird. But yeah, I would definitely live at this place in River Oaks. And it's not my style either. But I could make it my style if you gave it to me.
Right.
And the staff and the money to take care of it.
You totally could.
And I'd list it for sure.
Oh, yeah, definitely. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. If you sold that house, you could not sell anything else for a long time.
That's true. Yeah.
Not us. You got hustle.
Oh, yeah. But not
okay,
morally questionable hustle.
No, not that.
Fine
Not
line.
that. So that wraps up another episode of Crime Estate. Thank you for spending time with us. We love hearing from you. So if you enjoyed the show, please take a moment to leave us a 5-star review. It truly helps more people find us and keeps this show going.
Oh, speaking of 5-star reviews, we had one review that said we were too chatty.
Really?
And I told the person that we agreed that we had cut down on a lot of the chit chat.
Have you listened to episodes 1 through 30? There's a lot of chatting.
Right. Yeah. After episode 30, we were like, oh, this is too much.
Yeah.
So yeah, nowadays when we record, we get our chat out before we start recording.
That's right.
And then after we record it, we get a lot of our chat. So we have definitely narrowed down some of our chatting. But yeah, I mean, it's hard when you have a bunch of friends wanting to hang out and chat with you guys. But yes, if you want to support Crime Estate beyond just listening, visit our website, head to our Buy Me a Coffee link. It's a small gesture, but it goes a long way to keeping us lubricated and helping us to continue.
Lubricated?
Lubricated. To continue to research, write, and produce each episode for you. You can always support the show by sharing it with your friends, following us on social media, joining our email list for episode extras and sneak peeks. And honestly, we love it with recommendations too. So give us your stories. We're always on the hunt for unique, different stories, some that may be famous, some that be less famous, different parts of the country or different parts of the world.
Yeah, so it's so fun. We just launched the email list like last week or whatever. And I'm, out working, doing my real day job. And I get notifications that people have signed up. It makes me so happy.
Yay.
So yeah, thank you all for listening. And we'll be back with another episode very soon.
Yep.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Hey, y'all. Thanks for listening and being a part of our Crime Estate family.
If you're curious about today's featured crime estate, you can find additional photos and details from today's episode online at crimeestate.com or on Facebook and Instagram by following at Crime Estate Podcast.
Have a crime estate we should cover? Let us know. Shoot us an email at crimeestatepodcast@gmail.com. Until next week.